Hi everyone, welcome to Learn Python. In our previous video, we have talked about control structure. In any programming language, we have control structures such as conditional statement, loop, and so on. In the last tutorial, we have discussed conditional statements including if else, nested if else, and much more. In the current tutorial, we are focusing on understanding for loop. Why do we need loops in programming? In any programming languages, we use loops whenever we need to repeat something. So instead of writing the same chunk of code every time, we can create loops to do the task efficiently. We will see some basic examples, very simple examples of for loops. This tutorial will give you an idea about the situation where for loop is applicable, and I would say more focus of this tutorial would be how we do it in Python. The concept remains same in other programming languages also, but the syntax might differ there. Now you can see that this is the outline of talk and it is going to be a lengthy tutorial, so brace yourself for that. In control structure in for loop, we will talk about how we can loop through a range of numbers whenever we want to repeat some task for a range of number, probably in a sequence, like I want to do something for the range of numbers 1 to 10, or maybe in even numbers, odd numbers, so something like that. And reverse order and sorting, all those sort of things we will see. Sometimes we want to perform some particular operation for characters of a string. So we will see how we can use loop through a string. So these things we will start with, and this is very basic of for loop. Then we will talk about for loop through list. Now what is a list? List, dictionary, tuple, these are Python data structure which we will cover in detail in separate video, but still we will see how we can do for loop through list or tuple or dictionary. And if you want, you can cover these topics after you get an idea about list or dictionary, but you will be able to understand this tutorial even if you are not familiar with Python data structure. I will make sure that you understand how we are using for loop through these data structures, and definitely some related function again for sorting or removing duplicates we will see. We will also see how we can use for loop using enumerate. Here we are using range function for numbers, and this is also for numbers, another function enumerate. So we will see some examples and we will see how range function is different than enumerate function. And we will see how we can use it using a zip function when we want to loop over two or more than two sequences. We will see nested for loops. So for all these topics, we will be using range, enumerate, reverse, set, sorted, these kind of functions, and maybe some other functions also. After we are done with that, we will talk about break, continue, and pass statement. Now these statements are really important to understand, not only in context of for loop, but also if else condition, while loop, and many other such situations. So probably I'll split my video here, and in the next tutorial we will talk about break, continue, and pass statement in context with the for loop. Although the code here is in the same file, so I'll be sharing this same file in my GitHub repository, and the link would be provided in the description box, but still I will create a separate video for this so that it does not become very lengthy or you don't find it overwhelming if you are doing it for the first time, right? So let's start our journey for loop through the range of numbers. Now before we do that, we need to understand that how we can generate a range of numbers in Python. So for that, we need to start our discussion with the range function. You can see in Colab we have a table of content here if we have used the markdown properly using headings and subheadings, and we can quickly jump to the section which we want to discuss. So let's talk about range function. Now how does that work? So range function is basically, it is an iterator which give you sequence of number. But what happens if you type range of 5? Give me a moment. So here I'll not write all the codes myself to reduce the duration of the video, but we will see how it works. So suppose I'm trying to find range of 5. Range is a function and inside that I'm putting 5. Now the output is weird. We don't get anything. We were expecting to get numbers from probably 0 or 1 and up to 4 or 5, something like that. But we are getting this kind of output. This is strange, but this is how the range function is defined in Python, right? If you want to see what are the elements in this range, then you need to put them in the list. We will talk about list in great detail later on, but suppose you put them in a list like this, range, any number you can give. I'm just taking 5 as of now. And when we do that, you remember when we put multiple statement in the same code chunk, only the last statement gets printed. If you want to print both, you need to use print statement explicitly for the previous commands, right? So let me just run this, and what we see is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. These numbers. So we get 5 numbers, but in Python range function, it starts by default with 0, right? And we get up to the index which is 1 less than the number which we have put here, right? So if we want the numbers up to 5, we need to write here range 6. And if we want it to start with 1, then we need to write here one more argument, 1, 6. When we do that, it will start with 1, it will go up to 5, and it will print those 5 number. Remember this number, but it will go up to 1 less than this number. So when we do that, it prints 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These numbers it has printed inside a square bracket separated by comma. And this is nothing but a list in Python. We will talk about this, but list is defined inside the square brackets, and the elements of the list are always separated by comma. We can have numbers in the list, we can have strings in a list, we can have any other data types in the list, but those items should be separated by comma. So we have here 5 elements in this list, right? And few more examples, like we have done range of 1 to 10. Again we are getting this, but if we want to see what are those numbers, we need to put them inside the list, right? We can also define the step size in the range function. For example, I need the numbers starting from 0 up to 9, but I need the alternate number. So we can define the step size here. So I am defining step size too. So first argument is the starting point. Second argument is the ending point. I would say ending point plus 1. And the third argument is the step size, right? Those who are very new to programming and ever done this kind of stuff before, I would say range is a function, and after the parenthesis what all we put, these are known as arguments. We will talk about arguments and all these stuff in functions. We will make a separate tutorial for that, but as of now you see that this is a function and we are giving these inputs to these function, right? And let me print it again. We will not be able to see what are the elements of this, so we need to put it inside list. List is another function, and it will put the item separated by comma inside a list. So you see starts from 0, alternate numbers, so it is 2, 4, 6, 8. It is not printing 9 because we have defined the step size 2. It has not printed 10 because that is what the definition of range function asks for. It need to skip the last number which we are providing, right? If you want 10 to be included, you need to make it up to 11. Then it will include 10 also. You can see that. So I hope range function is clear to you. It is really important that you understand these basic function before you move on to loops, because in the loops you would be most of the time iterating using these functions. There are many other functions which will come to your life when you move on to libraries like NumPy and random numbers and all those sort of things, but don't worry, here we are focusing on building our fundamentals and foundation. Then again we can learn many different things and we can practice those concepts, right? So these are few more examples you can run. Now let's talk about our first for loop, and here we are creating through a range of numbers. For example, I just want to print the numbers in a sequence, right? So I can give you different questions like print the numbers starting from 10 up to 20, print the numbers starting from 10 up to 20, only even numbers, only odd numbers, or the numbers with a gap of 3 or something like that. So these kind of questions you can practice once you are done with the tutorial, or maybe in between also you can pause and you can run the code and see what works for you, right? So here what we are doing is we are just printing few numbers in sequence, right? And the loop, how we write the for loop is, the syntax is, it is very similar to what we have seen in if else condition. So here we start with for. As soon as we give a space, it turns blue. because it's a keyword, right? So Python understand you are trying to write some for loop, right? And you need to define here something, some iterator. So the commonly used iterator is I, but you can use X, Y, Z or any other name. We will see some other examples also, but I is very common in most of the programming languages. For I in, here I am writing range of something. Suppose I am writing range of 11. What does that mean is, we are saying that range of 11 means, you know that it is the list of numbers starting from 0 up to 10, right? So we need all those numbers. So I will go one by one. It will check the first element of this list, right? And it will say it is 0. Now for the 0, whatever you want to do, you need to write that statement here in the next line. So when you hit enter, it will automatically indent your code. If it does not, then you need to give it 4 space from your keyboard. I'm using Colab, and I told you earlier that in Colab the default indentation space is 2. That's why my cursor is blinking after 2 space. In your ID or depending upon your default setting, you may have different indentation, but the basic Python style indentation is 4 space. So after that, here you need to write something. Whatever statement you will write here, Python will do the task for that particular value of I, right? And for example, we are just doing print I. In all these examples, I am mostly using just print function, but definitely we can use a lot of computation here. But to make the concept very simple for beginners, I'm just using print I. So what this thing will do is, it will check first element in this range 11, that is 0. So it will print that 0 because we have asked it to print that element. That's it. Then it will go again and check the next element in this range 11. The element is 1, so it will print 1, and so on. Next element is 2, it will print 2, and so on. It is just going to print all those elements for us up to the last element. That is what we have asked it to do. So let's run this and see what happens. So we are getting to see all these numbers, right? Now it's up to us. If you want to do some calculation, suppose instead of printing something here, for example, we want to manipulate I also. So suppose here I want to do I is equal to 20 plus I. Just some simple random calculation, anything I just want to do. And then I am printing I. Now see what happens. Or I would say, just try to think what will happen. Can you think that? It will take I equal to 0. So it will do 20 plus 0. The first calculation is 20 plus 0. Now those who are coming from mathematics and understanding programming for the first time will find it weird that it is not a true equation. In maths we can't make it true, I equal to I plus 20. But in programming, it is just a way of saying Python that we want to update the value of I. Now I should be 20 plus the previous value of I. So this is just one way of saying Python that we want to update the value of I. We will see a few more notation here later in the course, but I just want to tell you more about the for loop and how it works in general, right? So it will update the value of I, and now we are asking it to print I. Now see what happens. For I equal to 0, it will print 20. Right? Then it will again check the next element is 1 here. So again it will update the value of I, 20 plus 1, that is 21, and it will print that I for us. So 21 it will print here. Then again it will go to range of 11, and the next element is 2. Again it will put here 20 plus 2 is 22. So it will update that value, it will print that value for us. So instead of getting 0, 1, 2 up to 10, we are getting 20, 21, 22 up to 30. So this is just one simple calculation which I am just showing you, right? So depending upon what you want to do, you see when you Google some tricky questions for loop or beginner level questions for loop, you will see a lots of interesting problems there, and just try to find out how you can solve those problems using for loops, right? And that way you will learn a lot how we can improve our for loops. But this was just to show you the basic concept. And obviously if you write anything outside the for loop, outside means without indentation, that would print anyway. So that would print in the last. It is not going to iterate because the thing which you are doing here is going to iterate. for all the values of I. But if you are writing here print done, you can see that done is written outside the for loop in the last, right? Let me show you what happens if instead of writing this outside the for loop, by mistake, suppose you have put it inside the for loop, what will happen? So let me give it an indentation of 2 spaces here with my keyboard. Now see what happens, and I hope you have guessed it too. For every value of I, it is going to print done also. So for every value of I, it will do this computation, it will print the updated value of I, then it will print done. So you see 20 done, 21 done, 22 done, and so on. So this is how it works. So whenever you are working with loops or if else or something like that functions, you need to be very, very careful about indentation, right? And those who are worried about how we can change the indentation default one in the Colab, you can just go to tools, settings, depending upon what ID you are using, but in Colab it's here in editor. You can change all these things. I am using this contrast color, or there are many things you can change, font size and everything, but here is indentation. So by default it is 2, you can make it 4 also. I am happy with 2, so I am not changing that. Okay, so we have seen one basic example. Now, if we want to print the numbers but in the reverse order, then we can use reversed function. For example, I'm just doing for I in range 5, print I. It is just going to print 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? But if I want these numbers to be in reversed order, so what we can do is, instead of using range here, we want to use sequence which is in reversed order. So we will use another function reversed, and inside that obviously we will write the same sequence so that it reverses it. So let me just use Ctrl X from my keyboard, reversed, and inside that's range of 5. Now if I print, it should print 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. I hope it is clear to you. And you can do it for this kind of stuff also. Here I am just printing the number starting from 1 up to 9 with a gap of 2 in reverse order. So you can just run these kind of stuff and see. Now for loops through a string. So I told you we can iterate through characters of a string. How we can do that is, it's very simple. Instead of giving here some range kind of function, we are here talking about a string. So a string should always be in quotation marks, single quote, double quote, whatever, right? So here is my string Python. Now what I am saying is, for I in Python, print I. What does it mean? It will go and check the elements of this string, and one by one it will print all those elements for me, right? So let's see. It should print Python, Python, one by one in the same order. Whenever P is capital, so it is capital here. Whatever order you have written, or capital is small, it will take care of those and it will print for those, right? Now I'm not doing a lot of loops here. I'm just giving you 1 or 2 examples for each case, so that you get an idea. You can refer to this tutorial and you can practice yourself, right? Now let's talk about how you can use for loop through a list. In case you find anything confusing in the tutorial, feel free to write in the comment box. I will be happy to answer that. Now list, we have already discussed earlier. List means we will put the elements inside the square bracket. Elements would be separated by commas. Elements can be numbers or a string or boolean, anything, right? So here is my list X. Delhi, Pune, Mumbai, Bangalore, Hyderabad, Lucknow and Chennai. So these are some city names, right? And what I want to do, I want to write the city names, right? So how we can do that is, what I have done for city in X. Let me just comment this line first of all. So instead of I, here I have used the word city. I told you I is the commonly used iterator. You can use any other name. You can use J, K, X, T, Y, alpha, beta, gamma, whatever, city, whatever you would like, right? So any name you can write here. I is commonly used, or otherwise we should write the name which is more relatable to that particular example, right? So here I have just used city in X. So what it will do again, it will check for each element of X. Now Delhi string, this is the first element of X. Pune, another string, this is second element of X, and so on. So for each element of X, what we are asking it to do? We are just asking it to print that element. That's it. So it will print all the city names. Let's run this. Delhi, Pune, Mumbai, Bangalore, Hyderabad, Lucknow and Chennai. So it is just printing them in the same sequence. Here we are not asking it to order it or do something with that, right? If you want to also count the number of characters in that particular string, the function is len, length function. What does this function do is, let me tell you, len of, here I'm just writing any string, for example Python. So it will just count how many characters are there or how many letters are there in that particular string, and it will just give me the number. So Python, 6 characters, right? So it is giving me number of elements in that string. So if I want to print along with the city names how many letters are there in the name of that particular city, I can also use this statement, print len city. I hope you know how to comment and uncomment a line. You can use hash from your keyboard, or you can use control// from your keyboard to comment or uncomment that particular line. So when you run that, you see first it is looking at the first element in X, which is Delhi. So Delhi. It is counting number of characters in Delhi. It is 5. Next city, Pune, 4 character, Mumbai, 6 character, and so on. These are just very simple examples, but I hope you are getting the concept. Now you can see that it is another example. Here what I have done is I have used the same name here, age and age. Age is the list which I have defined, 26, 35, 45 and 36. I am iterating, and instead of I here I am using age, here also I am using age, and I am asking it to print age. So it's kind of confusing. We should avoid these kind of things, but let me tell you, it will work too. It will look at the elements in this list age and it will print those. So Python is working happily, but we should avoid the confusing statement so that we don't get confused what value we are looking at and what we are asking it to iterate for. Now let's look at the similar example. This time we want the elements of the list but in the sorted order. Sorted means whenever I say sorted, if the elements are numbers, so it will sort them in ascending order, and when these are strings, so it will sort them in alphabetical order. So again here is X, a new list of cities. So what I have done, I have just added few more city names here, Delhi and Pune. I have repeated for a purpose, right? And I want the elements to be printed, but this time in sorted order. So for city in sorted X, instead of X, here I have used sorted function again. So sorted will sort X. Let me just show you how it works. Just a moment. If I just print here sorted of X, you will get an idea. It is just doing the sorting in alphabetical order. Let me comment and let me show you. So the same city names, but starting with Bangalore, then Chennai, Delhi, Hyderabad, Lucknow, and so on, right? So if we are using the for loop now, it is going to print in the same order. So these are the names. If we don't want this, let's comment this, and we are setting the nicely sorted names. Now there is one issue that Delhi is repeating twice and Pune is also repeating twice. So if we don't want these elements to be repeated twice, we can use another function which is set function. Let me just show you how that works. So if I just use set function over the list X, it will remove the duplicates and give me all the unique elements. So you see here we have these unique elements. Pune and Delhi are appearing just once. These are not appearing twice. And if I use sorted for this, it will sort the elements and then give me those unique elements. So let me just do it. Sorted set X. So we are getting the list of all those cities sorted in alphabetical orders with no duplicates, right? So now we can use these inside our for loops if we want to write the city names in that particular order. So what we can do here is for city, or you can write I in, we can say sorted set of X. And here we can just write print the city name. So these are the city names, alphabetically sorted and without any duplicates. So these are the things you can do, and some other examples with the age. Now if else and these statements we will do later on. Now let me jump to this thing. You can also use for loops through a tuple. We have seen how we can use for loop through a list. List means elements are there in the square bracket. Similarly, we have tuple is a data structure in Python, and here the elements are separated by comma but are there inside the parenthesis. And there are some differences between the list and tuple. We will talk about these later in the data structure videos, but the for loop works same, so it will just pick all those elements and iterate over those elements and do whatever you want it to execute. So we are just printing the elements here, so there is nothing new. Now let's talk about for loop through a dictionary. Now dictionary is another data structure in Python. We will again talk about dictionary later in detail, but let me tell you how dictionaries are defined. Dictionaries are basically the key value pair. Suppose you have some key and suppose you have some value for that key. For example, if this is your dictionary, I'm just giving it a name dict. We define the dictionary by using curly braces. So this is one difference. Set list in square bracket, tuple in parenthesis, dictionary in curly braces. This is just one syntax difference. And in dictionary, we need to have key and value. So key colon value. This is how we provide value. Again, we provide another key, another value, and so on, right? So this is how it works. Key 1, value 1, key 2, value 2, and so on. So we may have multiple key value pairs, right? For example, I say name. My name is Nisha. I say age. My age something in numbers and so on. So these are key value pairs, that a data point for a particular observation number for a particular row. Name is a variable. This is the value of that variable. Age is another variable. This is the value of that variable. Experience is another variable, and this is the value of that variable. So this is how we can store variable and their value, key and their value inside a dictionary. Now let's see how it works and some loop example for dictionary. Here is a nice dictionary. If you are a Harry Potter fan, you will identify this. So I have given it a name, Friends. Friends is a dictionary and Harry is key, Potter is value. So I'm just using first name and last name, right? So just for fun, Ron Weasley and Hermione Granger. So these are the three elements of these dictionary. We call this entry is the first element. In the first element, this is the key, this is the value, and so on, right? And in the dictionary, I told you that these are the keys. So Harry, Ron, and Hermione, these are the keys. Potter, Weasley, and Granger, these are the values. So let me show you by using the print statement. If I call, this is my dictionary name, friends, dot keys. If I call this function, I will get all the keys of this dictionary. Let me show you. So dictionary keys, Harry, Ron, and Hermione. And similarly, if I just want to fetch the values of this dictionary, what I can do is, let me just print this, Potter, Weasley, and Granger, like this. So these are dictionary values. And you see, and similarly, if you want to fetch both the keys and the values, you can use friends, means the dictionary name, dot items function, and it will give you the key values together. So Harry Potter, this is the first element of key and value. This is Ron Weasley, second element, and Hermione Granger, this is the third element. So this was just to show you dictionary and its element. Don't worry a lot if you don't understand dictionary as of now, because there would be a separate tutorial on dictionary and then you will be able to relate to it. But when I'm talking about for loop, I thought of giving you all those examples so that it becomes a complete tutorial, right? Or maybe you can watch this tutorial again after doing the dictionary. Now, suppose I want to print these names together. For example, Harry Potter one name, Ron Weasley another name, and Hermione Granger another name. Then what I can use is this items function. And before that, let me show you one more thing of print function. If you are really new to Python, in Python you can print two or more strings together just by separating with comma. So for example, I'm just writing here my name, Nisha, comma, Arora. So Nisha is one string, comma, Arora is another string. And if I ask Python to print this, it will print it nicely, Nisha space Arora, like that. So it's Python's way of typing the strings. You just need to write the comma here. It will concatenate and it will type those together, right? So we are using this kind of thing. So friends dots item, we have just seen that when we do that, we get these dictionary item. You can see here Harry Potter and all these, right? So what we are doing is for K and V in this. So K is the key here, V is the value, right? So for first element, K is Harry, V is Potter. For second element, K is Ron, V is Weasley. For third element, K is Hermione, third is Granger, right? So for each element, it will check one by one, K and V, and it will just print those K and V together for each element. So for first element, it will print Harry space Potter and so on. So you might have guessed already, it will print all the three names nicely together. This is the output. And suppose you are just interested in their first name, you don't bother about the last name of those. So you can just use friends.keys, dictionary.keys function, right? And here you just need one iterator. So you are using K. You can use I also. You can use first name, name, whatever you prefer. And you can print here. And as I just told you that in Python, if you want to concatenate to a string, you can use comma, right? So here my first string is this inside the quotation marks. First name is colon space. So it is going to print every time for each element of K, the same statement is going to print, right? And then here the value of K. So for first element, value of K is Harry. For second element, value of K is Ron, and so on. So let me just do that. It will print first name is Harry, first name is Ron, first name is Hermione. So for each of the member of this dictionary, it is printing their first name, right? You can customize your message whatever you want to do, or maybe you want to say hi Ron, hi Weasley, or whatever, right? For example, here I just want to address them with their last name, not the first name. So instead of friends.keys, I will use friends.values so that it will fetch the value pair from the dictionary, and here I'm just printing a message greeting to them. So hi Potter, hi Weasley, hi Granger. This is what we wanted to print. So I hope these things are becoming clear to you. If these things are little heavy for you, you can watch it again and you will be able to understand later on. Now, this is another example, but you can skip as of now. Here we have created empty list, those who understand list. And what we are doing is we are iterating for keys in the same friends list, friends dictionary, and we are appending the elements of those keys to this existing list, and we are printing that. So nothing, we will just get a list as the output, and in the list we will get all the keys from the dictionary friends. So we will get Harry, Ron, and so on. And because we are using print statement inside the for loop, we are getting is 3 times. So for first iteration, it is just Harry. For second iteration, those two friends, and so on. And let me show you if you put it outside. So it is for those who understand list and append function. Otherwise, you can just skip it as of now, and you can do it later when you understand list. So append function, just append some new elements to the existing list. My existing list is empty and I am appending some of the elements one by one, right? So I hope it is not very heavy for you. Now let me talk about enumerate and let me just see. Yeah, there is not so much to discuss in the current video. So I'm just going to discuss 2-3 things, right? Now we have already talked about range function, right? And range was nothing but the sequence of numbers starting from 0. Now enumerate is a similar function, but here you get two things. One is the count starting from 0. Another is the element of list which you use inside the enumerate function. So what does enumerate function do? It takes a collection or maybe sequence of number or something like that, and it adds a counter to that. Counter means counting starting from 0, 1, 2, 3 and so on. So basically it generates a list of elements and the elements are tuple. So 0 and red is the first element, 1 and blue is the second element, 3 and green is the third element. We can always start the counting with some other number by using the start argument inside the enumerate function, and we can use this for loop in many different ways. Here is one simple example. Here I have created a list. List name is sequence and the elements are 1, 2 and 3. Now if I create a for loop for I in enumerate sequence, instead of range I am writing enumerate and I am printing I. What it will do is it will print all the elements of enumerate sequence. So this is a way you will be able to see what are the elements of enumerate sequence and how these are different from range. Let me just print this. It will become more clear to you. You get the first element as 0 and 1. So here if you just use sequence, the list, so it will print all those elements of the list 1, 2 and 3. But we are using enumerate, so it is printing 1, 2, 3, but it is joining them together with some counters. So 0 with 1, 1 with 2, 2 with 3, right? And if it is little confusing for you, so let me just give it a new name here. For example, these are my favorite colors, red, green and blue. Now if I just do here, so what it will do is it will print 0 red, 1 green and 2 blue. So it is printing the colors but giving them a count also. But I want the count to start with 1, not with 0. Suppose these are my preferences of colors and I want to give them a starting count of 1. So what I can do is in the enumerate function we can here write the argument start is equal to 1. You can write a start equal to 10 or whatever. It's a typo. Yeah. So it will start the counter with 1. So 1 this, 2 this and 3 this, right? And these are the elements, but what is the type of these elements? The first element is this. Second element of enumerate is this. So I hope you guessed it right because these are using parenthesis. So the type is tuple. If you want, you can print the type also. And because I am printing it inside the for loop, it will print it 3 times. So 1 red, it is class tuple. 2 green, it is again of class tuple. 3 blue, it is again of class tuple. I hope it is making sense to you and it is not very confusing for the beginners. I actually wanted to make a comprehensive tutorial for loops. That's why I'm putting so many things. Now, when you use enumerate function, I'm using it the same example. What I have done here is I have used just one index here, I, right? And I'm getting, let me just first comment this line, right? And I'm getting the output like this. If I want the output to be nicely written, instead of a tuple, I want to see them the strings like 1 red and so on. So how we can do that is here we can use another index. So I, j, whatever you want to use. And here you can just write print I, comma j. So basically it will just take I is this 1, then 2, then 3 and j is this red, green and blue. So I hope you guessed it right. It will print them together 1 red, 2 green, 3 blue. So it is looking much better, right? But it depends upon your requirement if you want your output as a tuple or if you want your output as a string, like this. And again, when we need to use these kind of things, I'm not talking about those things right now, but I'm giving you all the fundamental concept of different ways of using for loops in Python, right? So these tutorials are useful for anyone who want to learn Python or who want to learn programming concept in general, which are applicable in other languages also. These are not data science specific tasks. I'll create a separate video where I will show you the path when you want to learn Python for data science specifically, right? But the concepts are always going to help you. If you have these concepts, you can use it later on also. Now, this zip function, if you find it heavy, you can just skip, but it is just 1 minute's task. So here I have 3 different lists, right? So when we have 2 or more sequences or lists, something like that, we can use zip function. Now, if you just Google the examples of enumerate, if you just Google examples of zip or something like that, you can even combine zip and enumerate. So there are many things you can do with these basics. But if you want to go in depth for those concepts, you can Google and you can do. Or if you have any specific query from my tutorial, you can always ask me in the comment box. Now, here what I want to print is, I want to print the first element of these 3 lists together, then second elements of these 3 lists together, then third element of these 3 lists together, and so on, right? So how that can be done is, first I need to fetch the elements from these. So I, J, K, 3 lists are there. So I am giving 3 indexes here, I, J and K. For I, J and K in zip of first, second, third. So let's see how it will work is, it will print the elements together from this thing. And you need to spend little more time if you want to understand in detail how zip function works. It will actually, again, it will create a zip object. And when I do this for loop, you can see that A, D, G, the first element from these 3 lists are there in the first row here. And again, for the next index, it is fetching B, E, H, these are here, and then C, F, I, these are here. So this is another example where you will find these things little more relatable. For example, this is my first list, questions, second list, answers. Now question is name. My answer is Nisha. Someone is asking me what's your highest education? My answer is PhD. Someone is asking me what is your profession? And my answer is corporate training, right? So these are questions and answers. These are related to each other, right? And I want to put them together nicely. Now here I am using format string, right? And we will talk about that in a separate video where we will talk about string methods and print functions. But how this will work is, it will print this string first. What is your? Now you see this is something weird. Inside the curly braces there is something written 0. So here we will write the question, whatever question, whatever is the element in the question list. So first statement, it will write what is your name. In the second statement, it will write what is your education, then what is your profession. And the answer is, it is 1. 1 means the elements from this. How we are defining that for 0 the elements are going from the questions, and for 1 the elements are going from answer list, because we are using here format QA. If it is confusing for you right now, you can skip this example. You will be able to relate to it when you understand the format string. And shortly I will create a video on that also, right? So basically it will write those together. So format Q and A, Q means questions and A means answers, because we are using Q and A in zip of these together, right? So let me just show you how it will print. What is your name? It is Nisha. What is your education? It is PhD. And what is your profession? It is training. Oh, it is using double question marks because I have put it question marks here also and here also. I can remove one. So it would be better now. Yeah, some of these examples are for advanced users. If you are a beginner, you can skip the examples of enumerate and zip. You can even skip the example of list and dictionary. As of now, you can cover that once you understand the data structure in Python, right? But those who want a comprehensive, complete video on for loops, they will be able to understand those things in the same video. Now, nested for loops. Nested means we have seen nested if else also. Nested for loops, same concept, means one for loop inside that another for loop and so on. We can have multiple for loops, right? And the idea is same, the concept is same, and we need to take care of indentation as we have seen in if else. So this is one interesting example. Adjective, red, small and tasty. Fruit is another list. Apple, plum and cherry. So these are three fruits, and these are might be some properties of these fruits, that we can have red apple, red plum, red cherry. We can have small apple, small plum, small cherry, and we can have tasty apple, tasty plum, tasty cherry, right? And if you want to print these together, right? I want to print red apple, red plum, red cherry, small apple and so on. So how we can do this is, because I need each element of adjective, this list, and I need each element of this list fruits, and I want to put them together. I want to combine them together and I want to print them. So it means I need to run two for loops nested with each other. So my first for loop is for x in adjective. What it will do? It will take first element of red. Okay. For that, what it will do? Here I am writing another for y in fruits, right? So it will say, okay, for this red, what I need to do? First element of fruits, it is apple. What I need to do with red and apple? I am asking it to print red and apple, right? So it will print red apple. Fine. So red apple is printed. What after that? Now for red, in y we have another element also. So it will again check this for loop, and the next element is plum. So it will print red plum. Then again next element is cherry, so it will print red cherry. So these three statements are print. This fruits list is completed. It will go outside this for loop, and the outer for loop is here. So next element of the outer for loop is small. So now for a small, it will work same. It will pick the elements from fruits list and it will put them together. So it will print small apple, small plum, small cherry. And again, because the list is done, it will go again to the outer loop, take the element tasty and it will print those. Let's see the output. Red apple, red plum, red cherry, small apple, plum cherry and so on, right? So I hope you are getting it. Whenever you use nested for loops, it will complete the inner loop, then goes back to the outer loop, iterate for the next element, again complete for the inner loop, goes back to the outer loop and so on until all the elements are done. And definitely we can end it in between also, or we can use some conditions, all those sort of complicated things. But as of now, understand it like this. Here is another simple example. Outer in this. So basically I have written outer. You can write IJK, but to make the things intuitive, I have used outer. So this is my outer loop. So in outer loop, there are three elements to iterate for: first, second and third, right? What we need to do with that? We just need to print. Okay, fine. Then in the inner loop, I'm just using again the inner word here, and the elements are 1, 2, 3. Fine. We just need to print those elements. Okay. So basically what it will do is, it will take first and it will print first. It will go to inner loop. First element is 1. So it will print 1. But inner loop still has to run. We have more elements. So it will print 2. It will print 3. Okay. Inner loop is done. It will go back to the outer loop. Next element second. So second, again 1, 2, 3. Third, again 1, 2, 3. So I hope things are making sense to you. It's not very confusing. Otherwise, in the summary portion, maybe I will write it with pen. Okay, so this is how it works. And you might have got it right. Instead of using the list 1, 2, 3, I can use range function. So pause the video. Tell me if you want to use range function, how will you use that? Yes, you guessed it right. You can use range 1, 4 instead of this, and that will work too. Here is the example. Same output. So I think we have covered so many things in the same video. Let me quickly summarize these things. In the next tutorial, we will talk about some important statements. So in control structure, this tutorial is about for loops. Now for loops means we need to iterate. We need to do a certain task multiple times, right? So we need some iterator. Those who are preparing for some interviews or those who want to dive deep into theories, they need to read about iterator, generator, iterable, all those sorts of terminology also. I am not going to talk about those things, otherwise it would become too abstract for the beginners, right? But if you want to perform something repeatedly, you can use loops. There are many types of loops. Here we are talking about for loops. So we can use for loops for a sequence of numbers. Means if the numbers are increasing 1 2 10 or something like that, and we want to do some operation for each of those numbers, right? And for doing it for the numbers, what functions we have used? We have used range function and we have used enumerate function. There are many other ways, but in this tutorial we have talked about range and enumerate function. So let me just talk about these two functions first, how this function works. So range function is like this. If you write range of 5, so it will have the numbers starting from 0 up to 4 in a sequence 0 1 2 3 4. But when you print this range of 5, you will get a range object. You will not be able to see this kind of output, because to save memory it doesn't create the list and print it right away. If you want to see the list, you need to put it inside the list function and you will be able to see. Fine. In the range function there are some arguments also. Suppose you want to start your range with some points, so you can define here start point. You can define here your end point and endpoint plus 1 basically, and you can here define the step size kind of things. Suppose you have range 1 comma 11 comma 2, so it will start with 1, it will stop at 10, and it will write with the space of 2. So 1 3 5 7 and 9, and it can't write 10 because we are having the space of 2. This is how it works. Enumerate function, how it works? So again, enumerate, if you print enumerate of something, enumerate, and here some list, suppose 1 2 3 or apple cherry banana or something like that. Inside that we put a list or something which is iteratable. Again it creates enumerate object, so we can't see the output. But what basically it does, it uses these elements of the list 1 2 and 3, and it uses a counter to them, an index to those numbers. For example, index 1 2 0 1 2, and it put those elements in the form of a tuple. So the output of this should be something like this. This is the first element, this is the second element, this is the third element, and these are tuple. We will talk about tuple later. Don't worry about these things right now. So we have seen for loops for a sequence of numbers, and these functions we have used. Obviously we have used another functions like sorted, which sorts the elements of the list in alphabetical or ascending orders if the elements are numbers. We have also talked about set, which removes the duplicates and gives us the unique element of that list. So all these functions we have seen. But what was the syntax of for loop? The syntax of for loop was for, here we write I usually, or whatever name you want to write. In, here we write whatever iterator we want to use. So here we can write the range or string or whatever we want to do, and here we write some statement whatever we want to execute. So this is how it works. It is a very general syntax here. It changes according to the scenario, and the code should be intended. So here we should have 4 space from the keyboard. Depending upon your ID, you might automatically get your code intended. In Colab, the default indentation is of 2 space. It will work also. So this is what we have seen. Also, we have seen how we can use for loop for iterating through a string. So if we are iterating through a string, the syntax would be like for I in. Here we write the string, whatever is my string, and again colon here, and here we write statement whatever we want to do. Suppose I just want to print all the elements of that string, I can just use this kind of a for loop here. And definitely we have seen for loop through list. So here we need to use list instead of that. So for I in, and here is some list. So you can define list in advance and you can just call it by the name here, or you can define the list here 1, 2, 3, whatever, and you can print the elements of the list or do some computation, something like that. And instead of list, if you want to use tuple, you can use that. So in list we have a square bracket, in tuple we have parenthesis. If you want to iterate through dictionaries, so what are dictionaries in Python? We will talk about those in detail later. These are in curly braces, and here we have key value pair. So 1, this is my key 1 colon, this is my value 1 comma. Here we have key 2 and corresponding value here, and so on. So we may have multiple elements. So suppose this is my dictionary X. If I want to fetch all the keys of this X, the function is keys. So X dot keys will give me all the keys of this dictionary, right? And if I fetch using values, I will get all the values, means val1, val2, and so on. And if I use items, X dot items, I will be able to fetch all the items, means key and value pair from this dictionary. So how we can use those in the for loop is, we can use for. If I just want to fetch key, I can write I in. Here we can write dictionary dot keys, whatever is the dictionary name, and here we can do whatever we want to do with those keys. We just want to print or we want to do something, right? And similarly for values, if we want to use items, I need to use 2 indexes here, because in items we have 2 things. So here I am using items, and I can print those together. So I comma j. So these all things we have seen. Let me tell you one more thing, that whenever we use print, and here we write some string, comma, another string, comma, another string, Python print those together. Suppose this is text 1, text 2, text 3. So Python will print like this: text 1, text 2, text 3. So this is how it works. And after all these, I know we have discussed a lot of things today. Just one thing which I want to tell you is, we have also discussed the nested for loop. So nested, whenever this word comes, you need to be little more careful about which is your outer loop, which is your inner loop. And you can see the syntax here. So we have for, outer, in, something. Now the something can be string or list or dictionary. We have seen so many examples, or range function or enumerate function, something here, right? And here we have some statement. We can have some statement here, or we can have that in the last after some computation. We can have like that. And here we write for inner or j or something like that in some sequence or iterator. And here we have some another statement. I'm just using print for example. It should be intended here, print. Now I just want to show you that when you write this kind of a nested loop, here this is your outer loop and this is the indentation. So for this loop, these are the commands. Whatever you write here, you can write multiple statement here. These all will execute for all these values of outer in whatever you are putting here, right? And this is your inner loop, starts from here. And inner loop, so again you have some indentation here. So for all the values of inner, in whatever you are putting here, all those statements would be executed here. So indentation is very important when you are talking about the nested loop. If you mess up with the indentation, you will not get the desired output. So I hope things are clear, and it is enough for this tutorial. In the next tutorial, we will talk about very important statements like break, continue, and pass in context of control structure in Python. Thank you for watching.